Bonjour Choutou, j'espère que ça va. You submitted a very, very good question, as always, by the way. The thing is, I just cannot answer you in just a few words because I think there is a cultural element to the answer. So that's why I want to explain it to you here. So the question you ask is in the textbook B1, in the section about le discours direct et le discours rapporté au passé, there is this exercise. Tu voudras m'accompagner au théâtre. Il m'a demandé si je voulais l'accompagner au théâtre. So this is the answer I gave in the textbook. But in the book, we saw that if the discours direct is at futur simple, quand je le rapporte in the past, the verb should become conditionnel présent. Correct? So, discours direct, futur simple, discours indirect, conditionnel présent. Okay. So, by right, as you said, because in the exercise the sentence is tu voudras, which is futur simple, then I should use conditionnel présent. However, here I used the imparfait. So the sentence should be in theory. Il m'a demandé si je voudrais l'accompagner au théâtre. Right? Because futur simple becomes conditionnel présent. So tu voudras becomes je voudrais. So we do agree on this, and actually this answer is also correct. But this is where there is a cultural element to it. Do you remember, I think in the A2 book, we saw this rule in detail. This is a different grammar topic. To express la condition about something, one of the key structure of sentences is sentences in si plus imparfait, then conditionnel. For example, si j'étais riche, j'irais au Brésil. Ou bien si je voulais aller au théâtre, j'irai au théâtre. J'irai avec toi, for example. I know that you know this kind of structure. The thing is, you know that in French, the imparfait and the conditionnel, they look very similar to each other because they have the same endings, right? Because the rule of conditionnel is that like conditionnel is defined as having the same endings as imparfait. So it's actually a very common mistake in France among a lot of people to mistake imparfait et conditionnel and to say one instead of the other. In this kind of sentences, it would sound like this. I could make, like, if I didn't speak French very well, which is actually the case of a lot of French people, even native people in France, I would say, for example, si je serais riche. If I say this, I am making a mistake between conditionnel et imparfait. I am using conditionnel instead of imparfait, right? The correct sentence is si j'étais riche, but because conditionnel et imparfait sound like they look very similar to each other, some people would actually make the mistake of saying si je serais riche, or for example, si j'irais au théâtre, etc. Okay? Now, the thing is that this mistake of mistaking and mixing imparfait et conditionnel is one of the most famous mistakes in France. So famous that, for example, as I put some picture here, this is a very cliche example, obviously, but this is just to explain my point, okay? If I was like someone in Paris who did a lot of studies and I have a very high level of education, and maybe I'm a bit pretentious because I live in Paris and I want to make fun of the people who live in the countryside and who have less money and who didn't go to university and who have a lower education level as me, to make fun of them, I would mimic them, I would do impression of them by saying this kind of sentences. Like I would say, si je serais riche, da da da. Like I would make this mistake on purpose to make fun of people who have lower level of education. This is how famous this mistake is. So as a consequence of this, even though this sentence is correct, we tend to naturally avoid as much as possible to have a conjugation in ré after si. So here, this is a very precise example. It's like an unfortunate example where this is actually correct. Il m'a demandé si je voudrais l'accompagner au théâtre. But unfortunately, even though it's correct, it leads to the sound ré after a si. So even though it's correct, it doesn't sound correct to French ear here. You know, like it doesn't sound really right. So it's way more natural to just go back to this kind of structure, which is to use imparfait after si, which will sound like si je voulais l'accompagner au théâtre, which by the way is not incorrect. This sentence is 100% correct grammatically. So both sentences are correct. The one that you wrote originally is good and it follows the rule of the textbook. But if you are actually looking for the most natural way of speaking, this would be how most people would speak. Il m'a demandé si je voulais l'accompagner au théâtre. And 100% everyone can understand what you mean, and it actually sounds more natural than this one. Okay? So that's a very, very detailed explanation, maybe a bit too much, but I wanted to emphasize this point because I think this is something that is like never explained in textbook, obviously. So now you get the complete reason. Okay? Très bien. Ciao.